Feels really odd doing a women's prize video without my mummy. Hi and welcome to my channel. I'm Simon and today I'm back with my Women's Prize 2021 predictions video. Can I predict the 16 books that will be on this year's long list? I haven't done one of these for ages and I was really excited about it. I was thinking of what to pre-record because I'm recording this. This is the second of 3 videos that I'm recording on February the 5th that I've changed my glasses and my top just to throw you. Ridiculous, isn't it? As this goes live, which will be the 9th or 10th of February, it will be almost a month until the next long list is announced, which will be on the 10th of March. March is my birthday month. It's the Women's Prize long list month. It's a very special month. I have done what I always do, which is cheat slightly. And I used to do this loads, although I've stopped the last couple of years actually, and it's a shame because I enjoy predicting a long list. I don't ever get them anywhere near right, and I kind of don't want to, it has to be said, because part of the fun is guessing and going through all your shelves and looking at what you've read and what you've not read yet and seeing what you think might be sort of the judge's taste. I think the most I've ever got right ever in a year, maybe 5, possibly 7, and that was when it was out of 20, which is what I was getting to. I've got a list of 20 books basically because that was what the long list used to be. It's now gone down to about 16. I only used to get a few right, but it was actually the joy of then finding loads of new books on the long list and knowing that I was going to read them that was really, really exciting. And I will be reading the long list again in 2021 with my mother. We've already had a chat with the lovely folk at the Women's Prize about it, and I'm really, really excited for it, and I know that my mum is too. She actually said, and it's very weird doing a Women's Prize video without her, but she was saying the other day, I need to get prepared, I need to get started on what I think might be on the list. And that's one thing that also got me thinking about what I thought was going to be on the list and what I had read so far and what I hadn't read so far. And here is this video. Long way of me saying that. Before I go on with the 20 books I've chosen, just a few points to note in case anybody asks. I haven't included books that I don't own copies of because I'm too lazy to do a picture of them there after I've had my Pfizer jab, because I've got a feeling my arm's going to go dead. I'm just putting that out there. Publishing dates have moved around because of the pandemic, so books have just been moved here or there. So I think some books that were eligible have now been moved to be eligible for next year. And I feel like I'm channeling my mother when I say this, because she says this whenever we're going from whenever we're going from the long list to our personal shortlist or predicting our shortlist, and the same when we go from the official shortlist to our favourite, that she channels the criteria of the prize, which are originality, accessibility and excellence. I will be doing these books in order of author surname. I'll be talking about the books that I've read first, 12 of them, and then 8 that I haven't read yet, and I'll be giving you elevator pitches so that it's quicker. And because I'll have talked about these in some point on a video anyway, and if I haven't, I will be doing very soon, because if they're not on the actual shortlist, they're still books that are very much on my periphery. Right, there we go. Let's go for it. First up is Tola Rotimi Abraham's Black Sunday, which is the first book that I actually read this year. This is all about 4 siblings whose father deserts them, then their mother deserts them, and they are sent to live with their grandmother in Lagos. It is set in the 1990s in Nigeria, and through all 4 siblings, we see the spectrum of ways in which women are treated from the 1990s really kind of up to the present day. And it's particularly interesting how the 2 sisters, and siblings and sisters will be a theme throughout my predictions actually, it's interesting to see how the sisters change so much from being so close when their parents were there, and how the trauma of their parents leaving sends them on very different paths. One on a very religious path, even though she actually does some quite unchristian things, and the other one to kind of be independent in a society that celebrates powerful women and women doing well, but doesn't necessarily celebrate their independence. That wasn't an elevator pitch, was it? Whoops, I'll try harder. Speaking of sisters, we have The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I absolutely loved this book when I read it last year. It's again about sisters, this time twins, who run away from home in the 1950s from their small village, and it's how their lives go on when they then separate, one of them who has lighter skin passing as a white woman and the other living as a black woman. And it's just phenomenal. I also love the different generations that come up later in the book. It's a book with a real propulsion. I found it really difficult to put it down. Yeah, I think this is phenomenal. Beautifully written. Yeah, absolutely page turning, and you just get so engrossed in it. A book that I loved last year that I don't feel like has had enough love is Sarah Crosson's Here is the Beehive. Can't speak. I probably should have said that it's a book that hasn't had enough buzz. Do you see what I did there? Right there. This is written in verse and it is so beautiful. It's about Anna, who has been in a relationship with Connor for quite a while. However, Connor is married. And when he dies suddenly, Anna is left to deal with her grief and her loss completely by herself because she's never confided in anyone about their relationship. It is so beautifully written. I just think it is phenomenal and I want loads more people to read it. So I'm hoping it's going to be on the long list, but if it's not on the long list, please read it anyway. Actually, it's a really nice way of being able to mention some books that I haven't for a while. Anyway, moving on. Something that I have read quite recently, the next two. Jenny Fagan's Lookin' Booth. And this starts in 1910, I think it is, when the Devil's Daughter arrives on the shores of Edinburgh and heads to Lookin' Booth Close, where she becomes part of this kind of tryst. And then we meet two other people living in the tenement block at the same time, find out more about them, and then we flip to three other characters decades later, and then three other characters decades later, taking us through the whole of the 1900s, and celebrating Edinburgh. Edinburgh's a real character in this book, but also celebrating a whole spectrum of people, different sexualities, genders, different races, different classes, the whole shebang, with this gorgeous gothic tone to it. And I think what she does, you're never disappointed. Well, you are a little bit. When you move from character to character, the way I describe it, you kind of go, oh, and then you go, ooh, that's the effect it has. Oh, ooh, I really, really, really loved it. As I did the next book, which I find very, very, very difficult to try and wrap up eloquently, easily, but I'm going to give it a go for this elevator pitch style video. It's Mrs. Death by Selena Godden, and I thought this was phenomenal. This is all about Mrs. Death, who is deaf, and she is a middle-aged, working class black woman who's often unnoticed. She can shapeshift and all sorts, and it's how we learn of her story through one of the people she meets, and we meet a lot of different people that she meets, but one particularly, Wolf, she meets when he's a young boy in this kind of Grenfell-like horrific incident, and later when he's a writer, she decides to tell him her story. She's tired, she's exhausted, and so out that story comes, and it's a real celebration of life and reminds us that we should make the most of the time that we have, whilst also looking at grief and loss and death in a very, very direct manner. It is phenomenal. A book that I literally finished this very morning. Remember that I'm recording this in advance of it going live. And actually, I don't know whether the reading vlog with this book and my thoughts in it will have gone live yet or not. If it has, I'll link it down below. If not, it's going to go live in the next day or so. Anyway, what is it? It's A Net for Small Fishes by Lucy Jago, and this is a brilliant historical novel set in the court of James I, where we meet Anne, who is the wife of an up-and-coming physician, and she has gone to, she knows the tricks of the trade, basically. She's been called to go and see Frances Howard, the Howards, of course, from the Tudor era. She meets her when she's in hysterics on the floor, having been whipped, and it's how this moment then ties them together. And it's been described as a Thelma and Louise of historical fiction, and I can totally see why. But more thoughts on this in my next wrap up, but also in that reading vlog. If it has gone live, I'll link it down below. If it hasn't gone live, it'll be live soon. Another book that I absolutely loved last year was Sisters by Daisy Johnson. Told you there was a sibling theme going on and a sister theme going on. And this tells of July and September, and as the book opens, they're being driven away from the lives that they've known, out into the middle of nowhere, into this old sort of semi-neglected building because of something that's happened at their school. What that is, we don't know. It's slowly revealed, as are fractures in the sisters' relationship. Their relationship is very cloying and very close, and one starts to slowly drift away. I shall say no more. It is brilliant. A book that I've talked about a lot recently, Love After Love by Ingrid Persaud, another one of my favourite books of last year. This book always just makes me smile, even though there's quite a lot of traumatic and triggering content within it. It starts off where we meet Betty, who is a woman who's being abused by her husband. We then skip forward in the future when her husband has died. It's just her and her son solo, and they have got a new lodger moving in called Mr. Chetan, and it's how they create a found family and also how their relationships bond. Some incredibly brilliantly awkward scenes ensue, but it's all done with joy and love, and yeah, until one night secrets are revealed that shatter everything, and we follow on from there as their relationships become very fractured indeed. It's just even though it's got all those awful things, I feel such a warmth to it, and I just love how Ingrid Besaud writes people, be they a main character or just be on the page for a little bit. She also writes about the Caribbean really, really well, particularly Trinidad, and you feel like you've literally walked the streets, tasted the food, the whole atmosphere is there. And it's the same very much, but in a different part of the Caribbean, with The Mermaid of Black Conch by Monique Brophy, which was the overall Costa winner for 2020. I was one of the judges. I love this book. It is a very gritty mermaid tale. And I've made this pun before and I'll probably make it again, it literally flips the mermaid's tail completely. We meet, and I always worry that I say this wrong, Ikea, who has been dwelling at the depths of the ocean since she was cursed and turned into a mermaid by jealous wives on the island. And she is drawn to the surface by a fisherman called David and his guitar. However, one day she mistakes the noise of some tourists for his guitar, and she is caught. It's quite a horrific scene. And then captured, taken to land. He helps her escape, and we follow on from there as she transforms back into the woman she was, which is some of the most incredible writing. It is so slimy and icky, but brilliant. It's a phenomenal book, and it looks at transformation, but also looks at some of the history of the Caribbean in a really interesting way, as well as also kind of there being this sort of people transform, but for how long does that last? You'll have to read it to find out. Then we have The Liar's Dictionary by Ellie Williams. I loved this book. It was such a joy. This reminds me of sort of how Akwaeke Emeze and Ali Smith will play with words in a really wonderful way. Actually, Selena Godden does this as well. This is set all around dictionaries, and we meet a woman who's working in the present day on a dictionary trying to find mount weasels. Mount weasels are words that are made up so that it stops dictionaries having the same copyright, or stops them from being copywritten, one or the other. We then go back in time to find out the person who was putting them in and what, if any, there is, I'll give that away, a message they are trying to send to the future. And I just thought it was brilliant. I was fully entertained throughout. I love the celebration of words. I love the character. I love the queerness. Phenomenal. Brilliant. Now we have one of my favourite authors, and I couldn't include all of my favourite authors, which we'll come to later maybe. But one thing I meant to say, and this is a slight cheat when I was talking about the Caribbean literature, I want to read a lot more. And two other books that I think could be eligible, I have proofs of, are His Only Wife by Peace Adzo Medi and How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House by Sherry Jones. Very excited about these. Going to read them very, very soon. So I meant to mention those earlier. Whoops, slight cheat. Number one of many, probably. Well, I've already cheated by 20 books, not 16. Sorry, I was mentioning one of my favourite authors. I say that, I've only read two of her books, but I just love her writing and adore her. And it's Charlotte Wood, and This Is the Weekend, which is about three friends who are going back to their mutual, who was the mutual fourth friend, I guess, of the group, her house, her summer house, after she's died, and are clearing it out. And it shows how she really was the glue that held these other three women together, and resentments from the past, things that have gone unsaid, or just thoughts that have come from the smallest moment start to come to the fore, and fractures show. And it really looks at friendship and all the secret these women are keeping, are keeping for each other, but also almost against each other in a weird way. But I just thought this was wonderful, as I did. I just love this book. How Much of These Hills is Gold by C. Pam Zhang. Now, that said, if Outlawed, if I was putting the two together, I prefer this. But if Anna North's Outlawed is on the list, I wouldn't be surprised. I think it's really, really good. This I just think is phenomenal, especially because C. Pam Zhang does so much with not I don't know, she manages to, everything is fully formed, and yet it's done so sparingly. This is about siblings again, who when we meet them are dragging the body of their dead father with their horse to find somewhere to bury him. And we then go back to see what's led them to being orphans, as we also go along and they do a bit of daring do before they try and find a new place to call home. And then even further back, which I loved. There were some reveals that come on later in the book that aren't like big twist reveals, but just brilliant reveals that show how it's not just cultural inheritance that we get, but also some of the pressures from our parents, but also some of the traumas they've been through. And I should say this book puts a real twist on the Gold Rush era, because it is about Chinese immigrants. So yeah, it's amazing. So those are all the books that I've read that I think could be on the list. I mean, there's more, like I'd love Karis Davis, The Mission House to be on there. I don't even know if it's long enough to be on the list because I think there's something around length. But there are various, I mean, Okweki Emeze I would love to see on the list, but I think they have said they don't want to be put forward for the list. So I'm not sure what the deal is with all of that, because The Death of Vivica O.J. is one of the best books that I read last year by a country mile. So yeah, there's loads of other authors I could have included, but I haven't. So on to the 8 books that I haven't read yet that I think could be on the list and I would really like to see on the list. So first up we have, and this is literally, I don't know very much about this book at all, other than everyone I know who's read it has raved about it and said I really, really need to read it. So I've got it. And this is Susan Abulahauer's Against the Loveless World. And I've heard that this is about a woman who is put in the cube, and journalists come and visit her. I think detectives come and visit her, and everyone's trying to find out her story. I think she's believed to be a terrorist, but I'm not sure. Like I said, all I've heard about this is that every single person who's read it has absolutely loved it and then said, oh, Simon, you should read that. So very soon, I'm going to read that. And this has only just recently arrived. In fact, so has that, and I haven't hauled them yet. The Manning Tree Witches by A.K. Blackmore. And this is a witchy book. That's all I know about it, and the fact that I love the cover. And I do think there are certain topics that I think are kind of rife for the Women's Prize, I guess, personally, but I could be proved very, very wrong. And that tends to be things like, I don't know, stories about women who are facing adversity or triumph in the face of it, I think can be a theme. And I feel like this is going to be one of those books, because quite often, as we know, witches were often wronged women. So I say that, I've not read the book, I don't know. I've got 2 pandemic books that I think could make the long list. The first is Emma Donohue's The Pool of the Stars, set in the Great Spanish Flu. The Great Spanish Flu always sounds wrong. The Great Flu sounds wrong, doesn't it? 'Cause it's like, yeah, great. Wasn't great. I think this is set on a maternity ward, possibly, definitely a hospital anyway. And again, everyone I know who's read this absolutely loved it. I mean, look at that cover as well. That shouldn't matter, but wow. One of my favourite authors who I don't think gets read enough is Stella Duffy, and I would love to see Lullaby Beach on the long list. It says No More Secrets, and I believe this is about a woman who finds either her aunt or her great aunt dead. It looks like that she took her own life. However, we soon learn that probably she didn't, and what's going on, and so her niece or great niece goes on to find out more. It's meant to be very much a Me Too book, so I'm intrigued for this one. The next pandemic book I actually started last year. It's Laura Jean McKay's The Animals in That Country, which has got this gorgeous cover. And this is set in Australia when there is a pandemic that seemingly makes people able to hear what animals are thinking. And it starts off with animals and moves on to insects and gets really, really dark. And we meet this fantastic character called Jean. She works on a zoo, so if pandemic gets there, we know stuff is going to go down. But it's also how she's this very eccentric, unusual grandmother who has a drinking problem and yet loves her grandchild very, very much indeed, and has a really, really odd relationship with her grandchild's mother, who was abandoned by her son and runs the zoo that she works for. So you've got all this fine family dynamic as well in it. And I was really, really enjoying it. So I'm kind of hoping that I'd love to see more Australian fiction being celebrated by prizes in the UK. It really, really winds me up that it's not. So yeah, I've got high hopes for this one. Now, I have been meaning to read this book since I got it at the beginning of the year, because I just think there's something about it that makes me think it's going to be amazing. It's also a literary thriller, which I would like to see 1 or 2 or 3 or even maybe 4 of on the long list. It's The River Within by Karen Powell. And I think it might be a twist on a Shakespearean tale. I'm not sure, but it is, like I said, about I think a couple of younger people, I don't want to say kids necessarily, or youths, who find a body. It's set in Yorkshire. It's meant to be amazing. And yeah, I really, really want to get to this one very, very soon. As I do, Congo Hill by Nima Shah, which this book has an effect on me before I've even read it, just when I hear the first line, which, oh no, it's not the first line of this, it's the first line in the PR document, which basically, this book is set in Uganda in the 1970s, and it's all about how families there were suddenly, I mean, there's curfews and all sorts, but suddenly were told they had to just get everything that they had. No, not even get everything they had. They just had to pick up what was close to them and leave. They had been banished from Uganda. And that, to me, honestly, I'm getting like proper goosebumps thinking about it. I'm going to have to read this very, very soon. I'm desperate to read it. I think this one could be incredible and be on the list. And last but not least, and also a book about Uganda, is We Are All Birds of Uganda by Hafsa Zayan. Now, this is set on two different timelines where we go to, I think, the 1960s, so just before the start of Congo Hill, where we meet a man living in Uganda, and then we go to, I think, one of his descendants who is living in London in the present day, is working as a high-flying lawyer, and they get a call to go home, and then it's how these two stories kind of intertwine, and I think it's going to be amazing. I've heard only good things as well, and so there's that one too. So those are the 20 and a few books that I think could be on the list. Now you might be thinking, Simon, what about Rodham? Well, I didn't like it, so I haven't put on books that I didn't like. Also, there were some really big books. They're not necessarily big in size, but sort of hype books that I would love to see on the list, but I just wanted to also give a shout out to maybe books that hadn't been so discussed already, like Luster, Plain Bad Heroines, I think, the new Patricia Lockwood, what else was I thinking of? A Burning, I think, could potentially be on there. What other ones did I think? Luster, I mentioned Luster, I think Luster could be on there. And also, and I should have mentioned this when I talked about the Zipam Zhang, it could easily be that the Shadow King and Burnt Sugar from the Man Booker Longlist could easily be on the list too. Or were they both shortlisted? I can't remember. Anyway, let me know in the comments down below what you think will be on the long list. Let me know if you're planning on reading it this year. Let me know any of your thoughts. And please, if there are any books that you have read that have gone under the radar that are eligible for the prize, or just like by women whose authors either you love or you've discovered this in this last year or whatever, that you think I should read, please tell me, because I love getting your recommendations in the comments down below. I will see you in another video very soon. If it isn't that vlog, it could be that. If not, the other video that I'm about to film, so I'm going to change my glasses and my top again, just to confuse you all. Finally, my one in, one out / sorting the shelves video, so that'll go live soon too. A bit belatedly, but there we go. I've had my Michelle Pfizer. Well, I will have by the time this goes live, and that might have thrown things out of whack a little bit. It may not have, who knows? I can't predict the future. I wish I could. I'd be a millionaire. On that note, I'll speak to you all soon. Bye. And I'd know what the Women's Prize, like longlist and shortlist and even winner were. So this would make all of this daft if I could see the future. I've overthought it.